The European Union, often lauded as a beacon of diplomacy and peace, has displayed a perplexing response to the potential for peace in Ukraine. Instead of embracing the possibility of ending the conflict, many EU leaders have reacted with anxiety and even resistance, a reaction that has left many observers puzzled. This unexpected response has raised concerns and questions about the EU's true commitment to peace and its ability to act independently on the world stage, free from external influences. The prospect of peace, it seems, has unveiled deeper anxieties within the bloc, anxieties rooted in structural weaknesses, geopolitical dependencies, and a legacy of following, rather than leading, on matters of war and peace. The EU, a union forged from the ashes of war, has long prided itself on championing peaceful resolutions to conflicts, a principle that now seems to be in question. Yet the potential for peace in Ukraine has been met with a hesitant, almost fearful response from many within the bloc, revealing a stark contrast to its foundational ideals. This seeming paradox, a reluctance to embrace peace, has exposed a dissonance between the EU's self-professed values and its actions on the world stage. The question arises, why does the prospect of peace in Ukraine evoke apprehension rather than relief within the halls of power in Brussels and many European capitals? The answer, as with many complex geopolitical puzzles, is multifaceted and deeply rooted in the EU's historical and political context. It lies partly in the EU's own internal structure, a complex web of 27 member states, each with their own national interests and historical baggage. This lack of a truly unified foreign policy often leads to a reactive and incoherent approach to international crises, making decisive action difficult. The Ukraine conflict, with its high stakes and potential for spillover, has exacerbated these existing tensions within the EU, exposing the limitations of its current decision-making processes. Furthermore, the EU's response to the war in Ukraine cannot be disentangled from the shadow of its transatlantic partner, the United States. For decades, the EU has relied heavily on the US for its security, often aligning its foreign policy with that of Washington, a dependency that has shaped its actions. This dependence has been particularly evident in the context of NATO, the US-led military alliance, which has expanded eastward since the end of the Cold War, much to the alarm of Russia. The Ukraine conflict, in many ways, represents a culmination of these geopolitical tensions, with the EU caught between its historical ties with the US and the need to forge a more independent path. The potential for peace in Ukraine, therefore, presents a unique challenge for the EU, one that tests its resolve and strategic capabilities. It demands a level of strategic autonomy and decisive action that the bloc has often struggled to achieve, highlighting the need for a more cohesive approach. The coming months and years will reveal whether the EU can overcome its internal divisions, break free from its over-reliance on the US, and truly embrace its role as a peacemaker in a rapidly changing world. The image above depicts a meeting between Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, and Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, in the months leading up to the Ukraine conflict. The palpable tension in the room underscores the complex and often fraught relationship between the EU and Russia, a relationship that continues to shape the geopolitical landscape. The European Union, for all its economic and political might, often finds itself hamstrung on the world stage by its own internal structure and complex decision-making processes. Comprised of 27 member states, each with its own distinct history, national interests, and foreign policy priorities, the EU faces significant challenges in achieving consensus. The EU often struggles to present a united front on critical global issues, which can undermine its influence and effectiveness. This lack of a truly cohesive foreign policy has been particularly evident in the bloc's response to the war in Ukraine, a conflict that demands decisive action. A cacophony of voices and conflicting agendas have hampered the EU's ability to act decisively and strategically, leading to delays and diluted measures. The EU's decision-making process, often described as a labyrinthine web of committees and compromises, further complicates its ability to formulate and implement a coherent foreign policy that can be swiftly executed. Decisions on crucial matters, such as sanctions against Russia or military aid to Ukraine, require unanimous agreement among all member states, making swift action difficult. This often leads to protracted negotiations and watered-down outcomes, as individual countries prioritize their own narrow interests over the collective good of the bloc, weakening the EU's stance. The war in Ukraine has exposed these structural weaknesses within the EU, highlighting the challenges of reconciling the diverse perspectives and priorities of its member states, which often clash. While some countries, such as Poland and the Baltic states, have adopted a hawkish stance towards Russia, advocating for tougher sanctions and increased military support for Ukraine, others have not. Others, like Hungary and Austria, have been more reluctant to escalate the conflict, prioritizing diplomacy and economic considerations over military action. This internal divide has often undermined the EU's ability to present a united front on the world stage, diminishing its leverage in negotiations and its credibility as a global actor of significance. The map above illustrates the divisions within the EU regarding sanctions against Russia, with darker shades indicating stronger support for punitive measures and lighter shades showing reluctance. This visual representation underscores the challenges of achieving a truly unified foreign policy within the bloc, a goal that remains elusive. To truly grasp the complexities of the EU's current predicament, one must delve into the historical backdrop of NATO expansionism and its profound influence on European security perceptions, which have evolved significantly over the decades. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, a military alliance formed in 1949 to counter the Soviet Union, has undergone a significant eastward expansion since the end of the Cold War, incorporating former Soviet satellite states and even bordering Russia itself. This expansion, while presented as a defensive measure by the West, has been viewed with deep suspicion and hostility by Russia, which sees it as an encroachment upon its sphere of influence and a direct threat to its security. The EU, while not directly involved in NATO's military operations, has largely followed the lead of its transatlantic partner, the United States, in supporting the alliance's eastward expansion. This alignment, often driven by a combination of historical ties, security concerns, and a desire to maintain transatlantic unity, has come at a cost. It has contributed to a deterioration of relations between the EU and Russia, fueling mistrust and undermining efforts to build a more cooperative relationship. The war in Ukraine in many ways represents a culmination of these long-simmering geopolitical tensions, with NATO expansion serving as a key catalyst for the conflict. Russia's decision to invade Ukraine, while widely condemned as a violation of international law, must be understood within the context of its historical grievances, security concerns, and perceptions of Western encirclement. This timeline visually depicts the steady eastward march of NATO since the end of the Cold War, illustrating the perceived threat that this expansion has posed to Russia's security interests and the broader implications for global stability. An unnecessary intermediary, the EU's dependence on the US in dialogue with Russia. In the heart of Istanbul, negotiations were underway, offering a glimmer of hope for peace. Delegates from both sides sat down, their faces marked with the weight of their nation's expectations. It was a moment filled with potential yet fraught with tension. Despite the earnest efforts and hours of dialogue, an agreement remained elusive. The missed opportunity lingered heavily in the air, a stark reminder of how fragile the path to peace can be. The world watched, hopeful yet apprehensive, as the chance for resolution slipped through their fingers. As we look towards Berlin, we must ask ourselves, is Germany on the brink of charting a new course in its foreign policy? The potential for a more independent German stance on the global stage is becoming increasingly apparent. Despite numerous challenges, Russia continues to profit significantly from its fossil fuel exports. This ongoing revenue stream plays a crucial role in sustaining the nation's economy and geopolitical influence. The economic and political landscape of the European Union is deeply affected by these dynamics. Member states must navigate the complexities of energy dependence, economic sanctions, and political alliances, all while striving to maintain unity and stability within the Union. Looking ahead, the European Union faces several potential paths in its foreign policy. Will it lean towards greater integration and a unified stance, or will individual member states pursue more independent strategies? The choices made in the coming years will undoubtedly shape the future of Europe on the global stage.
So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and let's turn the page on a new adventure together. Get ready to experience books like never before, only on VBook 360. Like, comment, and share to support the channel and keep the video magic alive. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, every video has a story, and every story deserves to be shared. See you in the next video.